From lips defiled and avoid, from an impure tongue and a soul defiled, receive my prayer, O my Christ, and do not despise my words, my appearance, nor my shamelessness.
We are summoned to look upon the human person as a whole, created in the image and likeness of God. Something very important for us as Orthodox Christians, because the Western connotation is not quite the same. While constantly struggling to maintain the likeness in our tripartite nature, consisting of body, soma, soul, psyche, and spirit, that is to say, consciousness or mind, pneuma or nous. This was in fact the theme of the Ocamper Conference in the year 2014. Apropos to the same, as the late Patriarch Pavle of Serbia, who was known as the saint that walks, would have it, we cannot afford to simply feed the body and ignore the soul, nor, conversely, can we merely feed the soul and ignore the body. Such a fragmented approach to one's own being brings about the weakening of the spirit and the confusion or disordering of the mind. Summoned by the Apostle Paul to be saints, here we fall short of our created purpose, for in his words, God is not a God of confusion, but a God of peace. In turn, such an imbalance within the human person inhibits healing on all possible levels. What we desire is wholeness. In fact, in the Serbian language, as is certainly the case with other languages, we have not one but two words for healing. Lečenje, which implies treatment, be it medical, psychological, or even spiritual intervention, while the other word, iscelenje, signifies the offering of wholeness or restoration. In other words, intervention alone is insufficient, as our collective purpose is to offer the restoration of human dignity to the person. In other words, one can still suffer from various ailments, but be completely restored because their dignity has been returned to them. An interesting tandem is also seen in the fact that in the same Serbian language, we have not one but two words for kiss, poljubac and celiv, the latter of which also implies celivanje, that is to say, healing. This specific understanding of a kiss, celivanje, can be interpreted also as veneration, as when one venerates an icon. In the Serbian language, you would never say kiss an icon, but you would say venerate an icon. This certainly calls to mind why a child intuitively runs to its mother and never to the father to kiss a small spot, and with that same kiss, the child's tears dissipate and pain subsides. Love is present. The revered author C.S. Lewis, in his classic work, The Four Loves, examines 4 types of human love: affection, or storgi in the Greek language, friendship, philia, erotic love, eros, and the love of God, agape. Affection, which is truly fundamental love, is described as the unrequited love of a mother to her child. This form of love can neither be demanded nor commanded, as it simply exists. Its very basis is deeply rooted in the intuition of a mother and a child. For this reason, a mother is always the first teacher of a child who learns by means of intuition. Aptly, as St. John the theologian would have it, God is love. O Theo Theos agape estin. The offering of a mother's kiss, or even a kiss at the conclusion of holy matrimony, which is a mystery, for the two have become one, can rightfully be seen as healing and restoration. There is, in fact, to divert from my presentation at hand, an ancient Greek adage which talks about what happens when someone seeks to find their partner in marriage, that they are looking for the other half of their own person that was split from them. So it was seen back then as a process of restoration. Greet each other with a holy kiss is the Pauline admonition to us. Wholeness. Offer each other wholeness when you offer a kiss. Perhaps at this point, it would be necessary to examine the 2 causal factors, isolation and violence, not only their general connotation in society at large, but also our particular Orthodox Christian understanding of them. Communion. As such, the latter should lead us to the 2 alleviation factors, hope and communion, which are in effect the very antidote to isolation and violence. What is isolation? Isolation is both a state of mind and being, which can either be forced upon someone or a group, or even self-imposed. Therefore, it can be both voluntary and involuntary, active or even passive. In illustration of the same, there are the scriptural cases of those who are demoniacs, involuntarily possessed by demons and forced to live where? Among the tombs and in the cemeteries. Why? This implies living outside the bounds of society and outside the community, as a necropolis was always located outside of the city walls. Isolation. However, by contrast, we also have the case of Orthodox monastics who take upon themselves the mantle of living alone in the desert. This is never to be confused with that which the late theologian Alexander Schmemann would deem living somewhere between utopia and escape. Rather, this is a cognizant choice to actively fight evil in its very isolation. And Father Alexander was always keen to warn us never to live between these 2 extremes. I might add that in today's electronic age, as it is so deemed, we also have an added dimension of isolation, which is in fact that which tends to be nothing short of deception of self and the public, for those who choose to abusively or otherwise while away their hours and life, hiding or even lurking behind the false security of a device screen. This, as in most cases of isolation, is the unmitigated tragedy of stripping one's self or being stripped of human freedom, the greatest gift given by God to humanity in creation, human freedom. Here we have the tragic tandem of isolation and enslavement. That is to say, a false sense of freedom. True freedom implies responsibility. According to the Pauline admonition, for freedom Christ has set us free. Stand fast, therefore, and do not submit again to a yoke of slavery. As another aside, this is one reason why our church prescribes fasting periods in order to free ourselves constantly, because we even tend to be enslaved by the very food that we eat. For us, the only plausible solution is the exercise of orthopraxis within the framework of orthokoinonia, that is to say, the community of salvation. The implementation of the same, of necessity, is at once both substantially steadfast and applicably variable, as the general principle must be applied to the particulars of the individual case. Hence, the purpose of this very conference. Violence. This exceedingly destructive force is both many and varied in the forms it assumes, from physical harm to mental abuse, aggression to intimidation, and even subjugation, and the like notwithstanding. As it is written in the Gospel, from the days of John the Baptist until now, the kingdom of heaven suffered violence, and men of violence take it by force. Violence is the very antithesis of peace and justice. Again, according to the Theologumena of Patriarch Pavle, we come to understand that for us, peace is not merely a philosophical ideal or concept. Rather, peace is Christ, for he is peace incarnate, who offers himself, likened unto Eucharistic terms. He is both the offerer and the offered. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. Not as the world gives do I give to you. Let not your hearts be troubled, neither let them be afraid. The advent of social media has provided us with an expedient source of information, often on a very deep and personal level, which can render a person entirely vulnerable and can also become the locus for abuse through disinformation and defamation. Its victims are left wide open and exposed by such gaping wounds of the heart and of the mind, which impede upon a person's functionality by attempting to shatter livelihood and lives alike. Here one calls to mind again another Serbian term, ponos. This comes to mind as a means of endurance in the face of humiliation, although in the Serbian language by misnomer it is often translated as pride. However, and correctly, the same is derived directly from the Greek word ponos, which means pain. The proper understanding of this term is to endure pain with dignity. The very antithesis of arrogance, it is hope. It is also of vital concern that one has the ability to shield one's heart, often referred to patristically as the seat of the human person. Many church fathers and ascetics, such as the great Seraphim of Sarov, have advocated whenever there is a conflict of mind and heart, that is to say, reason and emotion, placing the mind in the heart provides one with the ability to discern the proper way forward. Therefore, the gift of discernment, orthochresia, is fundamental to those who work with victims of violence and repercussions of the same, from physical pain to post-traumatic stress syndrome. Judgment, krisi, as such, without being judgmental, properly applied, will become a means of healing and the restoration of freedom and dignity in every crisis. Again, the same word, krisi. Judgment and crises, one in the same word. It is the offering of hope. Hope in communion. How does one cross that gaping divide between a life that is ordered and functional and one which is thoroughly dysfunctional? How does one offer the holy and glorious sense of Orthodox Christian healing and reveal hope in a movement toward communion? That is to say, parsing the word, a common union with each other and becoming one with Christ. For Irenaeus of Lyon, theology, and one might add here, by extension, healing, begins by seeing the reality of what is, and only then moving as a process toward revelation, where truth is to be discovered. Truth can never be manufactured, but only revealed or discovered. The starting point for us would therefore have to be far beyond existentiality, which concerns itself with human existence and a modus vivendi, which would allow for a tolerant existence. And one of the great problems of our world and all of the negotiations which go on for many and varied cases and causes end in tolerance. And tolerance rarely brings us to where we want to be. It is reintegration, communion, and unity where we would like to be. For tolerance in an existence places limitation on the offering of hope. Humankind was created for life, and life in its fullness, life eternal and not simple existence, but life itself. Sickness and death are the very antipodes of life, and therefore entirely irrational and unnatural. To promote real change and true healing, one must, in the understanding of Pia Sophia Chowdhury, in her superlative book titled Dynamism of Healing, Patristic Theology and the Psyche, seek the might and effectual operation of transfiguration in the very ontology of healing through the ontology of the person or personhood itself. Ontology implies the created purpose of being and reality. Therefore, humanity, again created in the image and likeness of God, can only be healed if suffering and pain are assumed and given over to the possibility of healing in the life of God. However, many would face the quandary of how does one offer that which is negative before God in anticipation of alleviation and change. Here, again, is quoted by Chaudhary, the 20th century theologian Olivier Clément wrote, "Nothing exists, anger or lust, that does not have some share in what is good. That fact is the basis of metamorphosis. Good, in the Greek sense, is, of course, the fullness of being." In order to understand the fullness of being, one has to understand the difference in meaning between fragment and fragmentation. As we come close to the knowledge of God, which is always being revealed to us, we are confronted with the fact that the fullness of the Godhead is entirely present in a fragment. This is our, if not to the rational mind, rather the intuitive comprehension of the Orthodox as to how taking a particle of the Holy Eucharist provides us not with a piece of Jesus Christ, but with the fullness of his body and blood. That particle is the fullness. There is no fragmentation in that fragment. It's very important, the distinction here. And we become one with him because we do take unto ourselves his body and blood, and this is communion. Hope and communion shall converge in the process of theosis as we strive to provide ourselves and others with the ability to overcome our own limitations, to cast aside isolation and supplant violence through the catharsis of mind and body in order to fully participate deeply and profoundly in God, such that we unite with God and thereby offer him who offers himself for the life of the world. In conclusion, and again, according to my holy namesake, Irenaeus of Lyon, on an individual level, the creative becoming, what a remarkable term, creative becoming of a person requires the free will of the person, which is formed and educated through experience. For Orthodox Christianity is an experiential faith. Taste and see how good the Lord is, something that no book can ever provide you with. That which is experienced is taken synergetically merged with the creative activity of God. For Irenaeus, every moment of that becoming is so significant. Indeed, we have gathered here at this conference so that we can, in this given moment of our salvation history, both individually and collectively discover the will of God for us in our assigned place and role, anticipating fulfillment in Christ and through Christ. For so often have the Desert Fathers written, "Blossom where you are planted." Thank you, and God bless and keep you well.
Jeste vi Amerikanka? Ne.
Ne.
Nego?
Angličanka.
Angli?
Angli.
Engleska?
Ja.
A, da. Ja se zovem Teodora.
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 Tako.
I koliko godina? Koliko let?
Koliko ljeta? 86.
86.
15. godište.
Ja. Razumaju.
Da.
Razumaju.
Sve redom, sve redom. Du. Da, a zna po-ruski?
Da.
Eto.
Pokaži.
Da vidi. Evo ga. Majka Božja Bogorodica. Bežanje Srba od Turskoga pre 500 godina. Evo, isto i danas to. Koliko smo mi pretrpeli, koliko sve nas mrze, ali pravda pobeđuje. Istina i pravda i dobri ljudi. Sve to vidi se ko je šta. Sve se to vidi. Duva, beži. Kako?
Slika ni više, istara se njoče.
Pa duva, vreme mu je. Da malo se odmorim. Slava ti, Gospode. Sve je dobro ono što ti daš. Treba razumeti. I ovo neka bude puno. Kad pišeš, onda ne imaš bogato.
Artemij prijehao.
Da, Artem, jeste uvatili, jeste? Otišao je, došao. Artem. Prva sam bila da mu priđem. Koljna od katko godina.
Well, Bishop, first, it is wonderful to be back after a year.
Da je jako divno da se vratim ponovo ovdje posle skoro godinu dana.
And before we start, I have a letter from Oliver Ljubinac and Vanja Jovanović from Sarajevo.
Što počnemo, imam pismo da pošaljem
Oliver Ljubinac.
Da.
Pismo I something else.
Pismo još nešto.
They wish to, and they send their greetings and their.
Kako smo ovdje se vidjeli, više se nismo sastali.
We haven't had any meeting since you were last time here.
Od prošle godine kad smo se ovdje vidjeli, pa do danas,
But since last year, up to date,
nasilje nad srpskim narodom, nad srpskom crkvom je eskaliralo.
violence against Serbian people here in Serbian Orthodox Church has been escalated.
Tako da nam je sada situacija mnogo gore nego što je bila pre godinu dana.
So actually we have a much worse situation now than last year.
Preko novih 30, u smislu drugih 30 crkva je porušeno od prošle godine do sada.
New 30 and more than 30 churches has been destroyed.
Additional ones since last year.
Taj broj je odavno prešao 100.
So that the number is bigger than 100 churches.
Najnoviji slučaj je pre 3 dana na Đurđevdan u nedelju.
The latest case was 4 days has happened 4 days ago.
Ovde, tako reći, u našoj enklavi,
on our holiday
u selu Sušica,
in one village nearby.
Čuva tu crkvu.
KFOR stopped to take care about the church last year.
Na našu intervenciju oni su rekli da oni imaju drugi način efikasne zaštite crkve.
On our intervention, they told us that they have a new way of taking care of those churches and monasteries.
Da ne mora da budu uvek prisutni.
So they don't have to be there all the time.
I pokazalo se kako je taj na drugi način efikasan.
So we saw the other way.
S tim što taj koji je to rekao, on je davno otišao u svoju zemlju, u svojoj kući i briga njega šta je sa crkvom bilo.
And of course that commander of KFOR went home long time ago, so he actually doesn't care. Doesn't care anymore about our church.
Ja sam opasno živa bila.
Pa 12 godina živjeti sami sa Albancima.
Zaista. Ja sam sva izgubljena onako, na svoj način. On kaže, mi bi te zaklali odavno, baba, ali si čovjek. Po kom čudu, šta? Kaže, gledali smo mi. Oni su to sve gledali. Pa su tražili kad sam dovela vodu, česma pred kućom, eto ovako. Samo kola što možda prođe 50 metara. Samu veru, kroz samo držanje njihovo, oni će kad tad da iščeznu taj gaman. Ako su oni ljudi. Oni su često puta tako nasrtljivi, biju se, pa razbiju glavu nekome, jedan drugom, pijano, ludo, šta ćeš mu. I dođe, znaš, babo, molim, a će mi daš vode, mori, jednu flašu, jednu šiše. Kako ne? Donesi 2 i 5. Znaš šta je 2 i 5, 15, znaš, samo se povlači. Ona mi gleda, ko veli, baš kako je luda, vidiš kako mi da, ja joj ne bi. Znaš, i tako pipka to. Evo, noš samo česmu ne moš odneti, ali vodu uzmi, kome treba. A, kakva dobra duša. Sve nad glavom monastirski nije uzeli, dvorište, kuća bila, slavina, voda, sve su mi to uzeli. Ja se neću njima pokoriti nikada, ali ipak svoj ugled neću, znaš, da kaja. Ja sam u njenim očima strašna, ali neću da imaju garant, da dokazuju da sam takva. Neka ispadnu oni ludi, ne ja. 12 godina bila.
Ludi ste vi, mati mladri.
Fan, du är sjuk så där och diggar och lägger patiensen och skydda.
Pucam ja sad, čekaj ti. Luda žena, luda baba. Aš mi je briga. Svi plaču, pa ne možu svi, malo neko nek nađe se i lud. Ovi naši gosti. Čekaj da vidim ko je ovdje, ovo 3, 4. Molim lepo.
Dobro večer.
Bog ti dobro dao, dobro večer. A dobri den kad je 12 sati i 1 sat. Dobar dan. 10, 11, 12 do 4 sata. Dobar dan. A onda dobro večer. Sada dobro večer. Srpsko.
Hoćemo?
Može. Ste mi dobro?
Da. Dobro, 86, malo šašlava. Odi, Mila. Odi. Odi. To si izašla ti. Da se odmoriš, ma. Mitica moja, jadno, gladno. Odi, Mila. Odi.
farina.
Evo tu. Ja tu. Tu.
Volimo recimo dole. Non da giare, senza tutelare. Hier ist die Ruhe. Wo war du dabei hier?
Ja sam izbjeglica iz Prištine. Iz Prištine ja i mama sam ovdje, a mama i sestra su mi u Prištini.
Šta da ti kažem, ja živim preko 30 godina na Kosovu, raznim mjestima. Zapeklo me rat u Vinču, Vitim. Onda sam rogu, sama sam pala po sebi, ništa me niko nije.
Da.
Tu sam već ima 5 godina. Sve vidim, sve me boli, sve znam, ništa ne znam. Još ništa ne znam iza leđa šta se tu. Joj, Mila, idi tamo da te pošalje, možda će ispasti nešto. Tamo pred kinom traži igumaniju, pa ona
Ne znam, stvarno ovdje.
I pa, kome je muka, taj kuka.
Drugom prilikom, da ih ne ometam sad, nemaju posla i...
Ne, pa uvek je tu posao. Hiljada tu pređe ljudi. Vojske, koji zna ko zna.
Da?
Da ne možda budeš priseban, da se ponašaš kako. Onaj ti za leđa, onaj ispred tebe, onaj te snima, onaj te zove, onaj pije kafu, drugi nije. To. Kola tamo, na ovoj strani, na onoj strani, ne znaš. Sve ima aparate, sve svako disanje.
Da.
Znam kako, zato i kažem, ko je ostao u Prištini.
Meni je mama i sestru još su u Prištini, dolaze utorkom i petkom. Znači, niti nas čuva kvor, ni ništa gdje smo imali.
Oni znaju sve o tome.
Tako.
Njenu zemlju je u državu očistili, nabili se zajedno u gomilu Agama i sad se izmiču i posmatraju kako nam se događa. Kamion radi, avion, i sve moguće, šta god dođe im do ruke, oni ljude izjurili, zemlju skrnavili.
Mi smo sa detetom do prošle godine bili u Prištini, na 8 mjeseci je bilo zatvoreno. Nije izašla nigdje. Kad smo je doveli ovdje, ona nije znala da priča.
Jeste bila jedna starica koja se silovali, bila to po 90 godina. Jeste, umrla je brzo u Niškoj bolnici. Tako. I pokazala je modrice ovdje kako su šitali, gazili.
Ma svašta su radili, svašta, ali mi smo strajno prošli. Bog nas je sačuvao.
Nije znala, čula da se nešto za decu daje. Pa došla sad, jadna, nije znala ništa. 7 godina ima deca. Kako će te jadne majke da prežive, kako da ga othrani, kako da ga sačuva. Njena duša zna. Neka. Gdje si ti, mami? Ajde da ja stanem ovaj red.
Joo, laita loppuun.
No, Katja, ja to vidim, čujem neki žagor, razgovor vedno. Daj da izađem. Pa eto. Niko mi ne dođe da vidi, da kaže, izađi, šta doživljava. Slava Bogu. Ostaće ona. Njeno ime ne umire. Nikada. Tu je ovo.
Gospod blagoslovi. No,
gruzinski. No, slava Bogu, za Gračanica skromna da doživi takve prijatelje. Jer me razumijete, ja isto...
Malo.
Imam jednu ikonu veliku, Majke Božije, troje ručica. I ona meni jednu ruku od njih daje i tako se služi.
Ja spominac mojih malih.
O, Gospode, hvala vam, oče. A, to. Tako, sad tek znam. Hvala.
Argativali, da znam.
Sve prijatno.
Ovaj manastir je u zadnje 2 godine. Pored toga što živi svojim punim monaškim životom, postao je centar duhovnog i narodnog života Srba, Kosova i Metohije. Ovde su prošli mnogi skupovi, mnogi susreti sa najvišim ličnostima iz celoga sveta. I svi su oni od ovih sestara bili dočekani i ugošćeni onako kao što hrišćanska ljubav i gostoljublje zahteva.
Evo, živa ti.
Hajde ja tako pomalo.
Tamo možeš. Mašala. No ti se sad pomalo.
Opet vi mašala šiptarska.
Da, pa ajoj, izvini.
Nemam ja šta da izvine, vi morate da pamtite nešto. Pa kako ćeš da zapamtiš ovo?
Pa ne da bume.
Pa sigurno njene prve stvari nikako. Ovo i ono za nikako. Što su raščupali Kosovo i pojeli.
Sve su nas se gori.
Ništa njino. I pljunina ono, i decu čuvaj, ne daj da jednom znaju svoj govor.
Nego.
Da.
Ima da odeš u drugu državu.
Ja sam bila, nije druga država, ja sam bila sama u Vitini, moj manastir, 12 godina. Ni jednu jedinu reč šiptarsku ne znam. Ne treba.
A i ja 30 godine, a dobro sam živjela s njima.
Da, ali ja sam morala, ako je trebalo. Ja nisam morala.
Ako nemam ništa sad.
Čuva moj krst, moje ime, moj narod, moj jezik, sve to moje. Zašto da prodajem i da uzmam njino buđavo, neprijateljsko, krvavi dani s njima?
A zašto mi nismo otišli s Kosova?
Pa neće. A Srbi su mekani. Ako svadbu pravi zove Šiptara, tu mu je pred kućom, ako slavi, ako što bilo, ma kafu neće popije bez Šiptara. A on polako kupi zmija pritvorena. Pa evo danas prosipa šta je kupio.
A rat moja tetka, sestro, rat, niko nije rat.
To je meni treći rat, nije šala i igranka, nego vidim šta je. Nije rat, nego krvoproliće bez potrebe.
Koliko mladići ne odešli.
Kako da volimo Boga? Ćemo voliti, to pokazati djelima kad ljubimo i svoje bližnje. Dakle, ako služimo i svojim bližnjima, onda će Bog da nas prepozna kao one koji imamo ljubav u sebi, jer tako će nas, po tome ćemo se poznati da smo učenici Hristovi, ako imamo ljubav.
So